Right, let's get into these track stacks now on a deeper level. Okay, let's look at them on a deeper level, and I'll show you some things you can do with track stacks, and then by learning all that you can then learn a bit more about them on a deeper level, and you can apply what you have learned in a wider context. Okay, now for me to do this next bit I need to wander off down memory lane first, right? So yeah, so we go now, back in the old days before most of you were born, and I do mean literally before most of you were born, we're talking 30 plus years ago. Oh yes, Obadiah, back then we didn't have any of these computers and plug-in effects and all that. It was, you know, it was all primitive. Oh, there goes the plods. It was all primitive in them days. Yeah, when we used to have steam-driven mixers and effects that you wound up with clockwork and all that, and we used hardware. None of this computer malarkey, right? Now, back then synths weren't so powerful. Okay. Some of them made great sounds, but they weren't very powerful. They didn't do much polyphony. In other words, they didn't play many notes at the same time. But more importantly, they didn't play more than one channel at a time. They were monotimbral. They played one sound on one MIDI channel. And it wasn't until digital synths started to become popular that the masses could buy into multi-timbral synths that could play more than one sound on one channel. But in the old days, Obadiah, synths were primitive. Synths, we used to dream of having a synth. We used to stretch a rubber band over a cardboard box, but it was a synth to us. You try telling that to the kids today. Yeah, all that stuff, right? But it's true. So synths would play one sound on one channel, our hardware synths, and some of them sounded great, but we might want to make more complex sounds, and the only way to do it was we'd make layered synth sounds. A bass made out of two different synths playing the same pattern. A pad or string sound or whatever made out of three different synths playing the same pattern. Okay? The way we do that is if we were making like a 3 synth layered sound, we get 3 hardware synths, we'd put the same pattern on 3 tracks of the sequencer, each track on a different MIDI channel, so the same pattern would trigger the 3 synths, each on a different channel, right? And then we would blend the sound of those 3 synths all playing the same pattern. We'd blend that on the mixer, blend the level, the pan, the EQ to mould the sound, any insert effects, send and return effects, and of course tweaking the patches themselves, so that if we built a pad sound, for example, out of 3 synths, we might hold down the master keys, the first synth comes in immediately, the second synth fades up a second later as you hold down the chord, bringing in this wash, and then the third synth comes in and fades the sound as you hold down longer. You can do all sorts of things, right? So we would make these layered synth sounds using 3 or 2 different hardware synths. Now, the trouble is, Obadiah, you try telling that to the kids today, they won't believe it, because nowadays they've got all computers and fancy insert, plug-in synths and all this massive and all that. It's all so powerful now. This art of layering synths has all but been forgotten, but it's a brilliant technique, and we can do it using these track stacks. And if we learn how to build a synth track stack, it helps us to better understand track stacks, and we can go on to apply what we've learned in a wider context, right? So, stroke your whippet, fondle your ferret, and aye lad, let's do one, right? So let's create a synth track stack, a layered synth track stack, and we're going to do it from 3 synthesizer instrument channel presets from the library. So I create an instrument track. Oh, by the way, I've set everything back in the mixer, as I said, so I've got the drum machine followed by its little reverb, the output and master. Right, here we go. Create an instrument, and when I do it, a blank instrument track and instrument channel strip are created. Okay, now I do this for a reason, which I'll explain further down the line, but I'll explain how you do this now. By default, when you install an instrument track, Logic normally loads up, I think it's that default instrument. But what's happening is, when you load this track, Logic installs by default a software instrument channel strip preset. This is a channel strip preset that's been installed. Now again, in the old tutorials I went into a lot of depth explaining the concept of channel strips and channel strip presets and their relationship to the library and the mixer and the track header column, etc. But basically, when you load an instrument channel strip preset, you're loading the entire channel strip, which includes the synth and the patch that it's playing, any effects, processors, any EQ, etc., and any send and return effects. All together, everything on that channel strip goes together to make the sound, in this case called Bright Mark II Blackface. That's a channel strip preset. The combination of everything on the channel strip, including return effects, all is the channel strip preset, which makes that sound. Now, to get yours to do nothing, you load up a track, it installs the default instrument, go to the channel strip for it there, go to the channel strip setting slot at the top, drop it down and reset the channel strip, and now it's blank. Blank track, blank instrument channel strip. And then delete any effects return that's created. Okay, now we go to the library with this highlighted and save it, and we'll save it as something like blank. Okay, I've already saved it as blank, so I'll overwrite that. Okay, now there it is in our library. So we right click on it and define that as the default. And then any time, I'll just delete that track. And then any time we create a track, software instrument, Logic just creates a blank. Sitting there waiting for us to choose what to do. Okay. Okay, so let's begin building a 3 synth stack from channel strip presets from the library. So there's my track and it's sitting there. I go to synthesizer, classics, analog polysynth. There it is. The analog polysynth channel strip preset is installed, and it creates 2 effects returns because its channel strip is sending out on 2 sends. So there's the 2 effects returns that go with this instrument channel strip preset called analog polysynth. Okay, let's create the next one. Here we go. Software instrument. Synthesizer, I'll go for strings. I'm going to go for synth pop strings. No, vintage synth strings. Boom, done. And I install my second instrument channel preset, and it also creates 2 effects returns that it's sending out to. Okay, let's make the third one. Create synths, pads. I'll go with this one called Mystic. Watch the mixer. Boom, done. Third one installed. Okay, so now we've installed 3 instrument channel presets, and the 3 of them have created a total of 6 reverb returns, 2 each. A small and large, a small and large, a small and large reverb for each synth. Because each synth is sending out on 2 sends to a small and large reverb. This synth is sending out to these pair of reverbs. This synth is sending out to this pair of reverbs, and this synth is sending out to this pair of reverbs. Okay, all right. Now let's audition the synths. Obviously, I would have been auditioning them as I was choosing them, but I'm going to do it after the event. So put a pattern on the track there. Let's just whack in a quick pattern. There it is, a quarter beat pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. Now here's a technique we learned in the old Logic 9 tutorials. Highlight the lot. Functions. MIDI transform, half speed. Shazam. The panel appears, nothing to do. We've highlighted the notes, no need to do anything except operate only. Boom, done. Close the panel, drag the region to be twice the length, and what's happened? Well, we've taken a quarter beat pattern going 1, 2, 3, 4, lasting a bar long, and we've half speeded it, so it's now a half beat pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4, lasting 2 bars long. That's half speeding. It's a technique we learned in the old tutorials, so go and watch the old tutorials. They are riddled with endless tricks and techniques like that. And for example, when we did the piano roll one, right, we really went into the depth, and I showed things like how you can create templates for MIDI control data, which you can load into a project anytime, and you can use those templates to load square wave, sawtooth or sine wave controller shapes into your current project, which can then be converted to any form of automation you want, either MIDI control data or track automation to any parameter, and then you can use those preset effects shapes, controller shapes, and change them to any tempo you like, 16ths, 8ths, quarter beats, half beats, whole bars, 2 bars, whatever, to do sine wave, square wave, sawtooth wave, controller or MIDI automation or MIDI controller moves on any parameter. All sorts of tricks, right? Go and watch the old tutorials. They all apply to this Logic 10 exactly the same, right? So there's our pattern. Let's copy it now into the 3 synths. So they're all playing the same pattern, and let's audition them. We've got a polysynth. We've got this synth string. And we've got this growly mystic thing. Let's make a sound. We'll tune this one up an octave. 2 octaves. This polysynth, I'm going to tune it down an octave. No, up 2 octaves. Like that. Okay, kind of like, there's a sound already, right? And it's not complex, but I could go further. I could EQ it. I could EQ each synth. I can further change the levels. I can change the pans. I can change any of these insert effects or tweak the effects that are already there. I can do all sorts, and remember they're all sending out a little bit of themselves to their 2 reverbs, a large and a small reverb. Here. Right. But that's not a bad little sound. And of course I could go further and actually tweak the synths. You know, whatever I like, yeah? Right. But that'll do. Okay, now. There's my 3 synths created from instrument channel strip presets. They've been tweaked however I like. But remember, they're sending out to 6 effects returns. So, we've got the sound now. We highlight the 3 instrument tracks, put them into a stack, a summing stack so they're all grouped. And there they are grouped. Now the single pattern plays all the synths in the stack if we put that pattern on the summing track stack. Fantastic, right? Now I think actually these synth track stacks have been brought into Logic kind of from MainStage actually. I never got to play with MainStage, but it's a live thing that was part of Logic. You have to buy it separate now. But I believe that one of the things it did was it allowed you to layer different software instruments from Logic to a performance patch, so you could play them layered like this. And I think, well, probably they might have brought that concept in to Logic, the new Logic, in the form of these track stacks for synths, you know, because you can build layered track stacks out of them, like I'm doing now. Right? So it could be that. I think it relates to MainStage, at least as an idea. Right, so I'm just making a smoke. Hang on. So there we are. We've created a stack out of instrument channel presets, and they're all in the stack now. They're all being grouped to this bus. Okay, Logic works out the first available bus, in this case bus 9, assigns them all to that bus and groups them. There's the group track, and the group channel strip, and there's its track. It's a summing or grouping track stack. Everything, the 3 synths are grouped to the bus. Okay, now I can name it. Well, what does it sound like? Got a big old pad in it really, so I think, I don't know, I'll call it, for want of a better word, I'm going to call it Ben-Hur. I don't know why. Ben-Hur. Big old glorious pad, stringy thing, you know. Right? Or, you know, I could have called it anything I like. Even reminds me of Telstar a bit with that riff, you know. Okay. There it is, created. Now, let's flatten it. And when we flatten it, we just get the bus, of course. So it's all done. But remember, the 3 synths in this stack, made from instrument channel strip presets, are all sending out to these 6 reverb returns. But they're not in the stack. Okay, let's save it. Library. Save. And I'm only saving to the user location at the moment, by the way. In the old Logic 9 tutorials, we did the whole bit where I explained about how you can save to the factory location. And by doing that, you keep all your bass patches in the bass folder, all your drum machines in the drum machine folder, all your synths leads in the lead folder, etc. Keeps everything in the right folders with all the other factory content. We'll revisit that for this new Logic 10 to make sure the folders haven't changed, the factory locations. But for now I'm saving everything to the user location, which puts them into user patches, all mixed together. Now here's what I consider another Logic bug, by the way. I've named this track stack Ben-Hur. I go to save it. Logic kind of goes, duh, what shall I call it? Look, aux channel. Wah, wah. Look, Logic, it's called Ben-Hur. I just named the bloody thing once. But I've got to name it all over again. Save. There we are. Saved. Right, we saved that track stack with only the synths in it. The effects returns being used by that stack are not saved in the stack. Save the pattern over here so we don't lose it. And I'm going to manually delete this stack now. Just highlight it and delete. Boom. It's gone. Logic leaves me on the bus. Delete it manually. We're back where we started with the drum machine. Its little reverb return the output and master. Okay, so let's reload that saved layered synth track stack that we created, which was saved without the effects returns, remember. But more than likely in the future you're going to load that into a song that's more busy. So I'll just create some dummy tracks. Duplicate that, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, I'm working on this song, this project. I've got a drum machine going, and then I've got a bass, a real bass, and a couple of acoustic guitars recorded, and a couple of hand percussion drums, and some vocals, etc. I've got a little electronic drums and acoustic thing going on. Okay, now remember, and I went into this in the old tutorials as well, the order in the mixer is always a mirror of the order in the track header column here. Okay, so there's the 909 stack compacted, followed by the audio tracks. That's the order in the mixer. Now when we reach the last track in the track header column and its associated mixer channel strip, once we get to the last one, after that in the mixer lives any auxiliary returns and the output and master. That's how it works. The order in the mixer is always a reflection or mirror of the order in the track header column here. Okay, let's load up that stack that we just created. Instrument track, create, and I want to load it. You know, I'm going to have it in my track header list here under the 909. Okay, there it is. I go to library, user patches, Ben-Hur. Ready? I've loaded it up now. Watch the mixer. 1, 2, 3. Load it. Oh my god, what happened? Well, look what happened. Bring the pattern back onto the track. It's exactly the same. And here's our stack. Let's open it up. And there it is with the 3 synths inside. But look what's happened. Logic remembers that this stack was created from 3 instrument channel strip presets. It remembers that each one was sending out to 2 specific reverb returns. And then what Logic does, when we reload the stack, which was saved without the effects returns, remember, Logic resurrects. It completely resurrects and rebuilds those effects returns outside the stack. Okay. Now, when you reload a stack, Logic looks along the song mixer and it goes, what are the available buses? And it, you know, no matter what this stack, when this stack was created, everything in it was assigned to a group bus because it's a summing or grouping stack on whatever was the available bus. But when we reload it into a current project, Logic looks along and goes, what buses are free? And it assigns the group stack or the summing stack to the first available bus. So it's done all that correctly, but this time the stack is assigned to bus 9. So everything in the stack is grouped to bus 9, all correctly. Then Logic resurrects the effects returns from scratch, absolutely correctly, outside the stack, and it assigns 3 synth sends correctly to the 2 reverbs for each synth, but perfectly recreated. So the first synth is sending out to 6 and 3. 6 and 3. The second synth is sending out to 8 and 5. 8 and 5. And the third synth is sending out on 10 and 7. 10 and 7. So you see what I mean? Logic completely resurrects The effects returns absolutely perfectly with the exact correct effects installed with the correct presets, juggles the buses, assigns them all to an available bus, and then correctly assigns the sends to those buses from the 3 instruments so that all the reverb returns are correctly resurrected. Isn't that incredible? Brilliant. Okay. So when we compact the stack, what we get then is we get, remember the order in the mixer is a mirror of the order in the track header column here, we get the stack, here it is compacted to its bus, this is the bus, and there's the effects returns living all the way down the mixer there in front of the output and master where all general purpose effects returns and auxiliaries live. Now, but these 6 effects returns are only being used by the 3 synths in this stack up here. Okay, no other channel strip on the mixer is using these 6 effects returns. Okay, these 6 effects returns with the reverbs on are only being used by the 3 synths in that stack, but they're separated because the mixer reflects the order in the track header column here. Right? Now, wouldn't it be nice if these 6 effects returns lived up the mixer next to the stack that they're working with, because they're only working with this stack. No other channel strip is sending to these. So wouldn't it be nice if they lived up the mixer next to the stack they're working with? Well, we can do that. Watch this. Once we've resurrected the stack, reloaded the stack, and it resurrects the effects returns, then we just highlight those 6 effects returns, right click and create track for them. Now when we do that, Logic will create a track for each of the 6 effects returns on the track header column. Ready? 1, 2, 3, boom, create track. And there we have it. Each effects return now has a track on the track header column. Now, if we make sure that we drag those up to live on the track header column under the stack they're working with, because the mixer is always a mirror of the track header column, we move them up the mixer to live under the stack, and they move up the mixer in the mixer. Sorry, we move them up the track header column to live under the stack, and they move up the mixer to live next to the stack bus. So now we've moved them up the mixer, we've got organisation. Now they moved up the mixer to live next to the stack they're working with. And now we can go to the further step of this. Whoops. Okay, there are the 6 tracks for the 6 effects returns created. Open the stack and we can drop them into the stack. Now when we do this, they'll push the last synth down to the bottom. And the other thing to notice, look, currently they have been moved up the mixer, but they're still assigned to the stereo out. But everything in the group stack is assigned to the group bus, bus 9. So look, on the mixer we get the 6 effects return tracks, drop them into the stack on the track header column here rather. Drop them in. The last synth gets pushed to the bottom, so drag that back up so we have the right order. Now we've got the 3 synths followed by the 6 effects returns, but they're now all in the stack. And once we've dumped those effects returns into the stack, they all get routed to the group bus for the stack as well. So now in the stack we've got the 3 synths followed by the 6 effects returns. Everything's perfect, all grouped to the bus. We have fantastic organisation now in our mixer, and we can compact it any time down to just the bus. Look, we can open it up any time. We've got access to our 3 synths and our 6 effects returns. And the other thing is, of course, now the 6 effects returns have got tracks. When we open our stack up, we can automate the group bus, because everything's going through this group bus here, right? So we can automate anything on the group bus to control the group. We can automate the 3 actual synths separately as well. But we can also automate any of the effects returns, look, because they've all got a track now. So we can automate those effects return channel strips and the actual effects on them. Absolutely fantastic. Total control and better organisation, right? Everything's now living in the stack. We manually dumped the effects returns into the stack, so now everything is tidy. All right. When we compact it, we just get the bus. Open it up, and inside we got the synths and their 6 returns. Brilliant. Okay, so that's how you do that. Now you might be thinking, well, that's great, that's absolutely brilliant, but why don't, now you've got the effects returns inside the stack with the synths, you reloaded the stack, the effects returns were resurrected at the end of the mixer, but all the synths were set up correctly from the synths going to them. You then created a track for all of them. That created a track for each effects return on the track header column. You could then move them up the mixer, and then you dump them into the stack with the synths. Well, why bother with those two extra things of creating tracks, moving them up the mixer, and then dumping them into the stack? Why don't you just save the stack with the effects returns in the thing, and then it'll load like that every time? Well, no. There's a bug. Wah, wah. Look, watch this. Move the region off there so I can save it. Compact the stack. But now I've compacted it. The effects returns are all in it, right? All the effects returns are routed correctly to... all the effects sends for the synths are routed correctly to the effects returns. They're all in the stack. Compact it. Save it. I was saving the stack with the effects in it. Ben-Hur FX, I shall call it. Save. Okay, manually delete it. Logic leaves behind the bus and sometimes all the effects returns, so delete those manually from the mixer, and we're back where we started. We got the drum machine followed by the audio tracks, then the little reverb being used by the drum machine, then the output and master. Alright, let's reload that stack with the effects in it. Here we go. Software instrument, create. Okay. Library, user patches, Ben-Hur effects, ready? Watch the mixer. 1, 2, 3, go. Oh my god, what's happened? Well, wah wah. There's a logic bug, you see. Look. There's the stack reloaded. And inside it, sure enough, there's the 3 synths. And the 6 effects returns. Right? But look, Logic blanks the effects returns saved in the stack and rebuilds the bloody things all again from scratch over here. And then it assigns the sends for the 3 synths not to these effects returns in the stack, but it assigns the sends for the 3 synths to the resurrected effects returns outside the stack. So it all sounds correct, but it's just rebuilt the effects returns outside the stack all over again from scratch, and it completely blanks the ones inside the stack. See what I mean? So there's no point saving the effects returns inside the stack. You know, you might as well just save the stack without the effects returns, and every time you reload it, Logic will resurrect those effects returns. Then you do the 2 simple steps I showed. Highlight them all, give them a track, arrange the tracks for those effects returns underneath the stack they're working with. They move up the mixer. Then if you want, do the further step of dumping them actually into the stack. When you then save your song like that, it'll reload every time. So there's a couple of manual little steps to do at the end, right? Okay. Or the other option is you do save the effects in the stack like that, but look man, you'd have to then, when you reloaded it, Logic would resurrect the effects returns outside, so you'd have to manually delete those, right? You'd have to manually delete the resurrected effects returns, and then you'd have to go to your stack and you'd have to get the first synth and assign its sends to whatever buses the first pair of effects returns are using, 17 and 12 in this case. So you'd have to reassign these to bus 17 and 12. Then the second synth to the second pair of effects, which are on now 13 and 14, because Logic rejuggles the buses when it loads these stacks, you know, whatever's available. So the second 2 effects returns are on 13, 14. So you assign the second synth, it sends to 13, 14, and the third synth to the third pair of effects sends returns, which are on now 15, 16. So these 2 sends to 15, 15 and 16. You could do that. It's a bit more long-winded actually, isn't it, than simply doing the trick where you create 6 tracks for the effects, move them up and then dump them into the stack. You know, but you could do that I suppose. Okay, so there you go. That is creating a synth summing track stack from 3 different synth channel strip presets and the whole thing about the effects returns. Okay. When we do it like that, it's probably not worth saving the effects inside the stack. Just save the stack without the effects, they'll get resurrected, and then you do the tricks to move them up and put them in the stack. But there is a way actually to create a synth stack where you can have the effects returns in it, and when you load it from the library again, it will load perfectly and the effects returns will not be reproduced again. A copy of them all the way down the mixer and everything routed incorrectly, right? There is a way of doing it. Okay, so I'll take a little break and I'll come back and show you that next, which will take us into another kind of level for these track stacks. Okay, so I'll show you that next. Okay, see you for the next bit.